At some point, you want to find a way to automate some of the stuff you do in 3D. That's why I got into Python, and that's why I love Python, because I'm lazy and it allows me to, automate a lot of things. And it's a great feeling to run a script and see all your line of code do something in the way you want them to do it. So anyway, just go into your scripting workspace, and I'm gonna do a quick overview. So that's the text editor, that's where you write your script. That's the console context menu, that's where you can kind of find commands and get to know commands a bit better. More on that later. And there is the info context menu, that's where the actions you do in Blender kind of appear, and you can just copy paste some code from here into your script, and it's gonna execute that action. So in this case, I want Blender to create a cube, so I'm gonna run the script, and it's not gonna work. And it's not gonna work. Why? Well, just read the message. Python script failed, check the message in the system console. So this is not this console. There is two consoles. This is this one, toggle system console under window. And the system console is something that always runs when Blender is running. It's just you don't see it. But it's not only used for scripting. So there is like some of those lines that have nothing to do with our scripts. That's basically Blender starting. So you can ignore that. That's an info telling me I've deleted one object, which I did when I deleted the cube. So okay, let's move on. That's my error, traceback. So that's what you're looking for. And what you're looking for here is line 1. So I know my error is on line 1. Okay, that's great. And I know it's a name error. And specifically, I know that the name BPY is not defined. So the system console is going to tell you where your script is failing and why it is failing, but it's not going to tell you how to fix it, because there is many ways you can fix stuff. So in this instance, there is only one way you can fix it, which is by doing import BPY. And this here is called a module. And what a module is basically something you add to the Python language functionality. And in this case, import BPY is like the way to talk to Blender. So BPY is something that you will only see in Blender's API. And I'm not going to explain what API is, but I will in the second video when I go more in depth. But to be able to write a script in Blender, you need to import BPY. And just to give you a visual representation, if this is the Python language, import BPY is a module that you just like add to Python basically. And there is tons and tons of modules online. You have the OS modules that let you manage some files with Windows, and you have some module I use often is the OpenPyExcel. So is this module, it can allow me to read cells in Excel, and I use it in conjunction with Blender, and it's great when you have to automate render for work and stuff. You have the random module. Random module is just allow you to have some random numbers in your script basically. It's great for procedural generative modeling and stuff like that. So every time I add a module, I expand the functionality of Python. And in this case, I import BPY, which is going to allow me to basically just allow me to execute this command. So Blender know what is going on. So when I run the script, it creates a cube. Okay, great. That's awesome. So my example is going to be I don't know, something I've come up with is kind of abstract and just not amazing, but it's an example. So I'm going to create an icosphere, a subdivision surface, and a simple deform, and I'm going to control my deform with an empty here. Oop. So if you're not familiar with simple deform, you can do some weird stuff with it by moving the empty around. And wouldn't it be great if we had like 50 or I don't know 20 icosphere, and they were all like kind of rotating with this empty? That would be kind of cool, I guess. So one way I could do this is just by creating them myself and copying the stuff, but that's long, and and then I get like this kind of cool result, and then you can like animate it and make some abstract animation or whatever you want to do. So I can do this by hand, but it would be better to do it with Python, especially if I want to change the axis is deformed on, but like for different balls, icosphere, and I get like this kind of flock weird result. Anyway, so what if we try to do that in Python? That would be great, right? So I'm gonna delete this and start fresh. Okay, so let's first add an icosphere. So same for the cube, we can just paste that, and I'm going also to add the subdivision again and the simple deform, and I can just take those lines and copy them. And just to try it, I'm gonna delete here and see if it works. It does work. And then what was the next thing? The next thing was adding an empty. So I'm adding an empty here. I'm gonna take that, put it here. Whoops. When you copy and paste, you need your mouse to be in the right context. So if I want to copy here, I need to have my mouse here, my cursor here. And if I want to paste here, I need to have my cursor here. Okay. So plain axe, and last thing, I want my axis origin to be the empty, right? And this I can copy and paste. And now if I try to run this, I'm gonna have an error. And I have this error because, well, actually, let's read. So on traceback on line 7, so the problem is on my last line, okay, of the code. So actually you can see that those lines got executed correctly, because if we come here, we have our two modifiers and we have our empty, but the only thing missing is this. So my axis origin doesn't have the empty here, which it should. And I know why, and you probably know why, but let's see why. So key error, key simple deform not found. Okay. So why is it not finding our simple deform modifier? That's what this is telling us. The simple deform modifier hasn't been found. And the reason for that is because a script gets executed from top to bottom. And right here, we actually added our empty to the scene. So like when we added the empty, it became the selected object, because when I, if I add the empty, it is a selected object now. You can see here in the viewport, it is in the outliner, and in the viewport, it's my selected object. So if I add the empty, it becomes a selected object. Therefore, it's gonna look for the simple deform modifier on the empty, because I'm not specifying which object I'm talking about here. So one way to fix this would be to simply add my empty before I add my icosphere. And in the second video, I'll explain to you how I can specify which objects I want the modifier to be applied on. But in this video, we're gonna keep it simple. So now if I select everything, delete, and run my script, this should work. Oh, right, great. Now I have this and it's been automated, but I can also, it would be great if we had like 3 spheres, right? That's the point. And maybe I can change the location of the sphere. So, it's pretty straightforward. So here you can see I'm adding the sphere. I don't want to enter edit mode, so it's set on false by default. And I want to change the location of where it's spawned. So I want it to appear at -2x, right? So that's x, y, z, if you don't know that. So this one is going to be on -2, this one is going to be on the world origin, and this one is going to be on +2. So I can just write 2. And let's try that again. So that should work, right? Yeah, now we have all our modifiers and everything is set up. So what if I want like 20 spheres? I could do this by hand and modify the location every time, but that's not fun. So I'm just gonna keep one of this block of code, and I'm gonna introduce you to the while loop. And the while loop is a way to tell, is a way for Python to like repeat code a number of times without having to write it, that many times. So I'm just going, bear with me for a second. I'm just gonna write some code here, and I'll explain what it does in a second. Actually, let's do that. Okay, so this code, so let's first talk about a couple of things. As you know, a script is read from top to bottom, except when we have indentation, it becomes a little more complicated. So basically what I'm saying here is while my variable, and my variable I need to set first, otherwise I'll get an error, and my variable is going to be equal to -25. So that's like that's just a number basically, but that's like a container for a number. And right now I initiate my variable by telling, okay, so my variable, it could be anything. I could call it x or whatever, but I'm just gonna call it my variable again. Is going to be equal to -25. Okay, so that does nothing for now, but now I'm using it. So while my variable is under 225, I want to do all of this stuff, and then I'm adding 2 to my variable. So I'm basically repeating this until my variable is equal or superior to 25. And remember, my variable is just like a container for a number. So it's going to start as -25. It's going to run the code once, and it's going to do my variable is equal to my variable plus 2. So my variable is going to be equal to -23. And it's going to repeat the code, -21, etc. until it reaches that point, until it reaches 25 or more. Okay. So that was kind of boring. I'm sorry for that, but let's see if that works, if that creates a couple of icosphere for us. And it did create a lot of icosphere, but they are all in the same spot. So one thing I can do is use my variable as my X location for the creation of my objects, my icosphere. So now if I do that, I have my icospheres, on the line here, which is exactly what we want. And I can take my empty, and I can do some weird stuff by rotating and moving my empty. And that's actually quite cool. And wouldn't it be great if we actually changed the axis on some of those? So if we change the axis to Z of deformation, we can see it's appearing here as a command. So one thing I could do is just do that. So I'm gonna paste it here. Whoops. I'm just gonna repeat that, right? So I'm gonna create a sphere, increase my variable by 2, and create another sphere. So it's gonna spawn at +2 compared to this one, +2x. And also the deform axis is going to be different, but I'm gonna make sure I increase my variable again here, so it doesn't spawn, like once this is red and it goes back, I need this my variable to be different from the one I use here, right? Okay, I hope this makes sense. So now every 2 icosphere is going to be on the z-axis. So hey, now we get this shape, and when we move this, we get kind of like this couple of things doing some weird stuff. And hopefully you find it cool. I think it's great. I think it's fun. Okay, so that's great and all. One thing I want to do, because it's a bit annoying, you know, every time I just like select all objects before I run my script, because if I don't do that, it's just gonna, you know, create even more objects on top of each other and duplicates, and that's not great. So why don't we automate that? So here you can see the select all command and the delete. So that's exactly what I want. I want those 2 commands, and I just you can select both by using shift. So at the very start of my script, I want to select all and delete. Let's try that. That's working. But if I do it again, I'm gonna have a problem because I get duplicates again. So this somehow didn't work, but why? That's weird. Okay. So one thing I can do to, like, it didn't work, but I didn't get any error message. So that's annoying, which means like it worked, but it didn't do what we wanted to do. And the reason for that is, I know the reason, but actually I'm gonna do what you would do, which would be, okay, so what's going on? You want to know which line is not working. Is it the first line or is it the second line? So one way to kind of do this, you can comment code, and you probably know about that if you've been programming even a little bit, but by hitting Control plus backspace on the keyboard, you can just comment code, and that's basically telling Python, okay, do not do anything with this code, just ignore this. So let's see what this command does. So if I have my cube selected and I run the script, oh what? It unselected the cube, but it's saying select all. Yeah, it's saying select all, but under in the parentheses it say action equal to toggle, and it's just gonna toggle the selection, right? It's gonna select all, unselect, select all, unselect. So I don't want that. I want it to select all every time, no matter if I have any object selected when I run the script, okay? Because I don't want to worry about that, right? I want the Python to do the job for me because I'm lazy. So I need to find a way to change this toggle to something that would select. And you're gonna say, well, how can I know that there is something else, and what is it going to be? Well, first, there is 2 ways. You can either copy this and go into Google and just paste it and go into the Blender manual. It should like send you, and it should be the first link, and you will see a list of action you can do with this command, and you might find the one you want. Or you can use the inbuilt console in Blender, and this is, my friend, this is beautiful. It's kind of broken. It kind of sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't really work, but I don't know any other software that have something similar, like for scripting. So, you know, it's cool we have it, even if it's kind of weird sometimes. But anyway, this basically gives us an interactive way to explore kind of all the actions and stuff we can do in Blender, all the data, how to access data with Python. So it kind of like gives us options. So it's kind of like a tree, like you have branches. So if I start with BPY, it's going to tell me, if I press tab, it's going to tell me all the things I can do that start with BPY. And then I can do, okay, so now I want to know everything I can do with BPY.ops. I'm just gonna, and you see there is plenty of stuff, and none of this makes sense at first. And actually, I don't know 95% of this, but it's fine. I'm just gonna write, or I could copy and paste, but I'm gonna write my command, and I'm gonna press tab. So, okay, now it knows there is only one thing I can do, which is select all and open parentheses and whatever is there in there. And okay, so I want to know if there is another action I can do. And yeah, I press tab now, it does nothing, but okay, okay. So that's one of the weird things in the console, but anyway, just try things out, see if it works. So what if I have 0 action? It's gonna... Oh, hey, I get an error, but that's great, because... Okay, something I forgot to say, if you write something in the console, not only does it allow to explore like kind of a dictionary of all the stuff you can do in Blender, but it's gonna actually try to perform that command. So if I was to... Sorry, I'm just gonna do... just gonna show this very quick. If I had tried to add a cube, I could actually, instead of running my script and like copy pasting the line and running my script, I could just do it from here and see we have a second cube in our scene that was added by this. Anyway, so we can see here, back to our error, we can see type error, converting blah 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 to operate. That's like bullshit. You don't need to know that. What's interesting is here. Hey, you see toggle? Hey, that's what we have here. But see, there is select, deselect, invert. Hey, so that means logically what we want is select, because we don't want to deselect everything and we don't want to invert our selection. So if I do this, I'm pretty sure, just by being kind of logical and just by kind of like trying to be, just to finding stuff by searching them. Okay, now, you know, it's always staying selected and it's going to select no matter if I have something selected in the viewport. So that's great. That's exactly what we want. So if I uncomment everything and run my script, normally I wouldn't have the cube, and I don't have the cube. So that's cool. That's working. So now I don't have to worry about deleting anything before running my script. Okay. So okay, now we have a pretty solid script actually, and I'm getting some kind of cool, nice effects. Maybe I can also even add more of that. You know, I can change the axis on Y this time, and see how that works. Oh yeah, okay, we have some more fun stuff going on, and now we are like this kind of effect. Okay, that's cool. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video actually, and I hope you tune in to the second video to see more in-depth tutorial and how to access data and how to make like more in-depth changes and without using so much the copy and paste stuff. And we're gonna see a lot more about Python and the difference between this kind of stuff, which is like bound to the Blender API, and this kind of stuff, the variable and the while loop, which is more of a Python thing, not bound to the Blender API. And we're gonna see the difference between this and that, and try to understand what the fuck is going on basically. Alright, so thank you very much, and tune in for the next one.